Good evening, guys. So I'll be going through the process that I implemented to be able to take advantage of this 250 pips move to the downside that played out on GBPCHF. And the tool I used alone was just the Fibonacci Fan tool. Now this is the Fibonacci Fan tool. It's actually called this Fibonacci speed resistance fan tool. So this is what it looks like. And what I do use this fan tool to do is just to get an earlier entry on head and shoulders patterns. Now basically this is what we were showed as head and shoulders. So whenever I mention head and shoulders, I know very well that this is what comes to your mind. And in the head and shoulders, that we know this is most likely the entry that we're looking at for. We're looking out for an entry that breaks and retests this neckline, something like this. But then before I go on, I also like to mention that the head and shoulders pattern is not just this alone. There are other forms of head and shoulders pattern. There are other forms. Now this is also a head and shoulders pattern, though it's more complex, and it's the best scenario to use the Fibonacci fan, because you cannot actually point a trend line this way and wait for it to break and whatever. So this is the best scenario to use the Fibonacci fan tool. Now another form of head and shoulder is also this. Now this particular type of head and shoulders, it's easier to get an entry using the neckline break. It's much easier to get an entry using the trendline break than this first one. The hardest one to get a trendline break entry is this particular one. So we could actually, this is what we most look out for on this type of head and shoulders pattern. Now the reason why I classify these three things as head and shoulders is basically because of the body structures. Now this is the first shoulder, and this is the second shoulder, and this is the head. You see, these three things, they have this same thing in common. So whatever thing that you may hear of it as, just know that all of them boil down to the traditional head and shoulders pattern that we know of. Now explaining this now, because I made mention of this being the best head and shoulders pattern to use the Fibonacci fan tool on. Now let me explain how to implement the Fibonacci fan tool on it before I go on with my video. Let me take this off. Now this is it. We have the start, the lift, and then price continues in the direction, but then price comes back down and then breaks this low to create a new low, which confirms a possible change in trend, and then price started pushing back up. Then price started reacting at this zone, and this is where I'll have to spot my entry from after careful observations. Now using my Fibonacci fan tool, all I just need to do is cut it across from here to this point, and then what I'm waiting for is for price to break into this 0.25 level, and then if possible, most times what I personally do is I wait for a retest of it before I sell off from there, and I'll target my base. So this is how I actually use the Fibonacci fan tool to get an entry on this particular type of head and shoulders. So that aside, now let's dive into the main thing that I actually recorded this video for, which is this GBPCHF trade that I took advantage of to catch this 250 pips movement on GBPC on the pair actually. So now I'm going to go through it just the way I did when I was analyzing it. Now I already pointed out that okay, this was my first shoulder, and then I'm having a head here, but then I wasn't too sure if this was going to be my second shoulder, so I needed some sort of confirmations that yes, this point is actually where the market is going to drop from. So what I did at first was this. I went closer to observe what price was doing at this current point, and using my rectangle I had to plot this kind of stuff. So this made it easier for me to see the market, to see what the market was actually doing, looking at it from this point, and then also this point, how the market reacted to this particular level. We could see that the market came, it tapped in, and showing this point was a very, very strong level, but a push actually happened to the upside and immediately it wiped it down. Like if you go to the higher time frame, you'll see that this particular thing that happened here is also a rejection. This thing is same as this, is same as this, and same as this. So in general, this whole price level was actually rejected, which means price was finding it hard going through this area. And another thing to take note of was this engulfing candle sitting above here, this engulfing area. This is how I personally do it when I want to take engulfers into consideration. So this is another thing to put into consideration. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, I'm getting somewhere with this. Now I needed more confirmation. Even I can get at least one more, I'll be cool. Now I picked out my trend line too, and I cut it across this way. You can see the way I cut it from this first touch to the second touch, and then I dragged it upwards. Now looking at that, it was now clearer to me that okay, I have the markets ready to move now in the direction that I'm wishing it does, so that I can take advantage of a big opportunity that I'm visioning. Now we'll see that the market from the first tap, second tap, and also another one here, and then it finally broke and came to retest it. Now I was well convinced that okay, this was going to be my second shoulder, because if this is not the second shoulder, then whatever thing that happens afterwards, man, is going to break above here and continue upwards, and it's not going to be the head and shoulders as I expected it to be. So I was ready to risk my money on it now, even before I started implementing the Fibonacci Fan too. Now this is what I did next. I just picked up my Fibonacci Fan too, and from my base I cut it across to the second shoulder. Now remember, like I mentioned earlier, what I'm waiting for now is for price to break into this zone, for price to break below the 0.25 line, then if possible a retest, then I can go short. Now I actually traded this on my $50,000 account. So this was my stop loss point, and then my target was around there. Yeah, I think that's it. My target was around there. So let me play it a little bit. The market actually started off, and finally had my break, and then a retest happening immediately. This was where I got into the market actually. Yes, I think it was 60 pips. And then the calculation that I did on the pips aspect was actually, I split my my max drawdown. My max drawdown was $6,000. Max drawdown is $6,000, so I split it by 10, over 10. which means I will be risking $600 on one trade, because I'm going very aggressive on this account. So I'm risking $600 on this trade. So I used my FX book to to calculate the exact lot size I was to use, so that if this trade should go against me, I'm only losing $600. Now, with it also being a 1:4 risk to reward ratio trade, that means if this trade should go in my direction, I'm going to make 2,400. That is 6 times 4. That's 2,400. So that was how I booked into the trade, my calculated risk, and the trade actually played out well for me. And that was how it went, and the rest is history. So another thing I wanted to point out, you can also see how price reacted to this level as well. There's a reason to that. It reacted off this level, similar way it reacted off this level too. So for you to know how this tool actually works, it's not as if I'm just looking to make a video. And finally, I had my TP busted, and price returned to that base to currently do what it's doing now. But for me, I'm done with this trade already. I have what I need from it, and that's just it. So thanks for watching, and have a good trading week.